their own business all the way down to 1900, the development of Arden and Rose Valley. I start with this slide at Williamson College each time I give a lecture up there, because this is Furness at age 22. Will Price, when he came into Furness's office, was 17. So you have these almost teenage people in this era practicing architecture. It's unheard of in a way. The youthful aspect of what was going on during all of this turmoil of growth through this industrial era. The thing that starts out with Furness as the mentor to Will Price, as he was the mentor to anybody that was in his office, was creativity, artwork, and it all starts with drawing. Furness learned to draw by working for Richard Morris Hunt in New York, and all they would do is learn the classic orders, draw them. Every time you had a free moment, you were to draw a flower, a book, your fingers, whatever you were going to do. But if you don't have the drawing skill, this is a drawing of Will Price's high school in Lower Merion. This is a Furness view of a chapel in France. You look at this kind of skill for youthful people doing it. This is one of my favorite drawings that I was able to find preparing for this. This was a developer's idea of how to develop Overbrook. The Drexel Company hired Price and his brother to develop Overbrook as a suburban development. This is a freehand drawing by Will Price of that particular stretch of Sherwood Avenue or Sherwood Lane, I believe. This is a mechanical drawing of it, which is the next thing after a hand drawn. This was, excuse me, this was produced in the studio. And what you see in the middle of this drawing is a house that Price continued to develop into his own dwelling, which is going to be seen a little later. I'll show you on the other side of the street. This is Furness cartooning himself, a form of sketching, a form of humor. The reason I brought a couple of these pieces that are before you is just to show different characterizations of how Furness would express himself. This is a drawing by Price. Again, it's a pencil drawing. It probably took him 2 minutes. Very impressive. This is something that I put in here. I know it's not legible to you. I know you can't read everything there. This is an architectural drawing of P.S. DuPont High School in Wilmington in the 1930s. And this is what I call the intermediate step between freehand drawing using a T-square and what everybody does now is called Revit. It's in computer, everything. You touch a button and you have a three-dimensional drawing in front of you. This is what architects were producing, everything from the details of the weather vane down to every little nut and bolt and detail on this thing. Anyway, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. It all goes back to the era of Price and Furness. They didn't have drawings like this. They had drawings nowhere near this. They could do an elevation, and then it was up to the craftsman to put it together. The brick mason, the carpenter, they had to be able to take a sketch and put it into a final product. the furniture aspects of Price. And I'm doing this deliberately just to show the different kinds of skills that were developed by him. He developed commercial shops in Rose Valley to produce furniture like this. I'm not sure if he had a commercial aspect down here or not. I know the forge was somewhat commercial, but I don't think it was to the extent that Rose Valley was. The distinctive part of what Will Price did was his joinery was not glued. It was doweled, pinned. These devices you see at the end here, these can be lifted up. You can take the table apart. He did not varnish his materials when they were finished. He left the wood grain natural. They'd be oiled, or they would, so that you could appreciate the natural characteristics of the wood itself. Mr. Furness, on the other hand, this is one of his furniture pieces. And again, any place I can show a comparison between the two is what I'm trying to do here. This is, I guess I can say it now. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I spent time in Furness's library. I thought it was a great building. I thought Victorian was about the worst thing there was. I mean, I could not get behind Victorian at all. And every time I see this, I mean, it's got so much going on in it. It's like a Fulbright study in wood. I mean, it's just an incredible amount. This is all original design, though. So anyway, and you've got to have a clock to go with that sort of thing. But now I really do appreciate Victorian. Furness used a great deal of glass. This is an interior window of the Penn Library. Furness used glass, I think, a lot more than Price did. Price valued windows. He valued natural light, but I don't think he valued it to the extent of Furness. Every major building and residence that Furness did had skylights in them. This museum, this library at Penn has glass floors in the stacks to let light penetrate the building. These windows are inside the building. They are light sources from the exterior window through that space into the interior window, into the interior space. That was how he got light into all of the buildings. Price uses it in the classical sense that you'll see in some later slides, and decorative, but not to this degree. This is Furness's masterpiece on Broad Street, PAFA, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, where Aikens taught. That connection back into the aspects of Arden. But this building was a great example of what Furness used to say, that a building without motion is a mere box. And by motion, what he means is massing of elements, projections, recesses, colors, pattern. Everything on that building is alive with something. You have to, and this is just the exterior. The first time he really started to show what became an American style or a new attitude about architecture, and not many people realize this. This is the north side of PAFA. This is a steel girder up here. This is see the diagonals in here are the webs of a truss work that spans from here all the way over to another wall. And that holds up a beam that contains all of this natural lighting of the galleries. The point is that the steel is painted on the exterior of the building. If you can go up there and take a look at the side, you'll see the sun reflecting off of it. It's shiny. It's a really a wild kind of thing when you look at it and see how not only do you see the steel, but then he goes inside the triangles and decorates it in two tones of brick. So where you will find, I think you all know now that Price discovered reinforced concrete in many ways the way Furness discovered steel. This is the Mount Airy Station by Furness. He did 125 buildings for the Reading Railroad. And this brings to call another aspect of the design of the times. Railroads wanted their line to be identified. It's the first time anybody ever did any branding. And that's what this is. Furness designed individual buildings, but they all were related so that when you were on the train line or approaching a station, you could take one look at it and know it's the Reading. He did the same thing with the B&O line. But you'll start to see a lot of the elements here. And this is, there are elements that are classic design, but Furness uses them in a different way. The massing of buildings, what he does with chimneys. He has outcroppings, he has brackets, he has movement everywhere. This is the sort of thing that Will Price was exposed to in the 3 years that he worked in that office. You had real hands-on treatment with the master or the owner of the firm because everything was directed by Furness. And a lot of this obviously rubbed off. Here are the gatehouses at the zoo. What is nice about these kinds of slides is that all of these things are still here so that you can go and look at them. You can experience them. This building is different than that building. This, I gave up counting all of the different little details and elements on here. This has got everything from, there are different slate patterns up in here. He'll bring this wall down, change the pattern to something different here. There are his Gothic arch, which usually prevails. There are brackets. There's field stone here. There's brick here. There's pattern work in the brick. There's stained glass in these buildings. It is a phenomenal building. Both of them, you can just walk around. They're like Rubik's cubes. They're just incredible elements of detail. I've always wondered how they did build it. He would do this from sketches, and then the craftsman would have to show him how he was going to solve it. Furness would agree to it, and that's how it was done. This is the inside of the Penn Library. Steel members supporting the great reading room. This kind of wrought iron detailing. Wrought iron was a new material in those days, so you take that as a design element, get the craftsman to bend it into the different shapes that you're trying to achieve. Some of those interior windows, these are all interior windows. There's a wall, there's a room behind these. But this is the kind of space that came out of, this was 1890. By then, Price had already started to do several of his major hotels. Not really. Well, no. I guess the best way to answer that is Furness began as a classicist. he knew all of the classic orders. What he did was take them and change them, or amplify them, or do them backwards, or upside down, or shorten them. He made different forms out of what was classically approved. That was the difference. So yeah, it's like Mount Airy Station. Oh yeah, it's a half timbered building. Well, he used a half timbered effect, but that's not a classic building. We're back to the Price house on Sherwood Lane. And this is the house he decided to develop for himself. This is what they built out of that drawing. It's not quite as elaborate as these. These are 4 houses, 1, 2, 3, 4, all attached. This was a brand new idea to take a 0 lot line or a townhouse kind of development and put it on one street. Well, across the street at 6334 Sherwood, oops, I did it again, is this house. So here, this is classic 1894, I believe, Price, using this kind of detail at the eave. This is all jigsawed out in a pattern. This is stained glass windows on the 3rd floor. Here's the half timbering. Here's a fieldstone base. And here is a decorative Tudor chimney. This is what Furness had developed. I'm sorry, I knew I would do that. It's what Price would have developed at this stage in his career. This is the back side of that same house. So he lived here for several years before he moved to Rose Valley. This is the really good photograph because now you're going to see the color which he used everywhere, especially in Arden, which is a red roof. But when you start to see the color of this composition, you really see how really wonderfully done it is. This is a drawing that I decided to get into the drawing contest. That's my drawing, which is in a bag that I hope you all will take with a little of our Friends of Furness material, plus a souvenir of this evening. I told you earlier I got hooked on Will Price by Sally. I got hooked so much, I went up and rang the doorbell. I went up there to see this because I wanted to walk the ground where this history was. And the neighbor told me, yeah, she's a friendly lady. She loves her house. No problem, go knock on the door. I did. And I met the owner. And then I started taking close-up photographs. Here's the stained glass up in the 3rd floor, which is actually a ballroom in this house. It's like this. It's the scale of this space on the 3rd floor of this suburban house. But you see the half timber. There's another device by Price. All of these spaces in here contain shields, and they have symbols or patterns. You can't see it. They've mostly eroded now. They were done in a stucco or some kind of plaster. They have not survived, but they all had this decorative element to it. That was the whole nature of what Price really fell into, along with Furness, is decoration. Let's do as much as we can to make it visually interesting, make it beautiful. Beautiful is stylized. You know, what's beautiful now may not be beautiful 10 years from now. But this house is in its original form. Here's the inside. Not only did I get in the building, I got to the 3rd floor. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm looking at 1894 construction, leaded glass windows, still in really good condition. It's thrilling to be in some of these spaces. Did I skip too many there? Yes, I did. This is the front door. And here, these are the kind of details that Price was developing. I think he developed them more in Rose Valley than he did here. This is an entranceway, Gothic arch. This is a hand-carved fillet in this area. Same with this. This might be where the motto board goes. This doesn't have a motto on it, but it's a hand-carved piece. This is wrought iron. And it's all still in pristine condition. This is the interior from an old photograph, but this is the interior. You walk in, there's a fireplace, there's a niche, there's this kind of paneling. And it's exactly the same way. This is the first time that Price introduced 45-degree geometry to a floor plan or to a building in any sort. Furness had been doing this for quite a while. Furness would bring you into the entry of a house and he would whack the two corners with 45 degrees. So you'd have maybe two doors and a stairway, or just change the geometry of the room. This is the first time that I think it's been documented that he used this 45 degrees. This is that little entryway, and here's the space that has the interior photograph. This is also what Price is doing at this later part of the 1990s, or mid 1990s. I'm sorry, 1890. Did I lose a decade?
Yes.
Oh, well, oh, forget that. Anyway, those kinds of interruptions, please. Don't. On 14th and Chestnut Street in Wilmington, the Jacob Reed Sons clothing store is still there. This is Alan Reed's house, which is, I believe, currently on the market, if I have the right, if anybody else has seen it. It's on the market. 7 million, maybe. I'm getting a nod from Mrs. Clater. 7 million, thank you. And this is the most amazing thing. This is Will Price starting out as one of the things that's really critical. He starts out as a developer's architect. He was doing subdivisions in the 80s, working for a developer, marketing. He marketed his own services by going to the T-Square Club, which was in Philadelphia. He had no buildings to show initially, but he had drawings that's skillfully done, rendering the drawing, the presentation that the T-Square Club was publishing annually of their members, just to keep broadcasting a new approach to American architecture. I haven't done the complete history of the T-Square Club, but it was started by a group of younger architects and engineers who were tired of seeing the Greek pantheon sitting around every bank corner. They wanted something different. This is the Roylandcroft up in Rose Valley, which was done. I show one slide from, excuse me, from Rose Valley, because it dawned on me halfway through my preparation as I accumulated some I don't know, 200 slides trying to talk to these two different types of architecture. I said, I'm not gonna worry about Rose Valley. There's enough done. It's a totally different place. It was on the main line railroad. It had a different clientele. The architecture is similar. It has arts and crafts. It's different. And this is almost typical of the custom high-end work that Price did up there. But it's just a different animal. This brings us to something that I think is, from my point of view, it's the one thing I think is absolutely stunning about Arden. And I'm going to start with, this is the site plan of Williamson College by Frank Furness. That is, the red buildings indicate 10 buildings in their original configuration, in their original use, built in 1890, because Furness won a 5-way competition. Isaiah Williamson wanted a campus to help young Philadelphia boys. He wanted a home-like experience. He did not want something monumental, institutional. He wanted it home-like. My theory is, and it has not been broadcast by any particular scholar, but just looking at it and knowing his history and knowing something about the military, Furness did 4 or 5 different bivouacking areas in the Civil War. He would house entire battalions of people. And this, to me, is a military layout. It has things like, these are all the residential units. They're equally spaced. Here's headquarters. Here's the commander's house over here. Here are the shops. It's like, you know, the armory is one thing. The corral is over here. Furness knew how to plan. And that takes me to what I really think is outstanding is the master plan of Arden. I started to realize this as I was walking around, and I hope maybe all of you know this. I don't know. This is something that I find astounding about this place. It's a master plan created 1900, and it's the kind of plan, I know it came from England. In a minute, I'm going to show you where it came from, because I was in England, and that's when I bought the book on miniature history of the English house and a couple other things. I've seen the garden cities in England. I know what they were trying to do, but the important thing here is this is exactly what the United States tried to do after the Second World War, when New York State started to create a thing called planned unit development. And that was a movement to recognize suburban development, have mixed housing, have mixed land use, preserve the environment, all of that. The first thing they did in Pennsylvania was they're called Levittown. That was a controlled housing development. What Price did here with his English countryside, with public open space, the creation of parkland on 2 sides, which preserved not only the woodland, but also got everything out of floodplains. And the most interesting thing is the connection, the path system. And this may not be all of them. These are the ones that I could see or identify when I would drive around in here. All of this interconnectivity was right out of England, granted, but it wasn't commonplace in the United States. The only thing I can see, as I'm somewhat of a planner myself, I've had a lot of experience in site planning. The only thing I can see missing here are detention basins. The ability to control rainwater runoff, bring it into a basin, let it sit, let it drain naturally so that it doesn't create erosion, flooding, whatever. I don't think and there may be some natural ponds here, but I don't think there's any designed detention system. So I think this is really masterful. After the planned unit development got established in the 60s in this country, every zoning code had a planned unit development, and developers would get credit and density for the use of different principles. If you fast forward to the 90s, now another thing came along called LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, LEED. And again, it was based on common sense. Let's put things in a way that they benefit from sun exposure. Let's protect natural resources. Let's control runoff. Let's look at soil conditions before you try to build something. Let's stay out of the floodplains, and let's, by all means, and the beauty of this is, why don't we try to create commonly owned open space where the community owns it? So back up, here's Mr. Price. The community owns the open space. I don't know that that even got written up in the National Register nomination, but I would think that's a major portion of it. Your houses, and I have to apologize, because if any of you saw somebody creeping around taking pictures of your houses, it was probably me. Because what I wanted to do is get sunny day, get some sense of color, because that's what it's all about. When Fells created the financing to build 5 or 6 houses and, fund some other elements here, his edict was make it cottage-like, stone-based cellars, red roofs, as beautiful as England and the Netherlands. I don't know why he brought the Dutch in at that point. Somebody will have to tell me, but he did. And they gave them to Price. And here, Price, being a developer's architect, he gave Arden 5 or 6 prototypes. I think the concept of this was, let's build houses that we want for the community, that relate to each other and the community and the principles of arts and crafts. And we hope that people will take these as samples and then grow off of that. Maybe someone here has done the research to see what other housing in the Ardens has done that. I suspect a lot. Anyway, you can recognize these houses. The thing about the Green Gate, there are Mercer tiles put in the wall here. This was something that Price did in almost every house in Rose Valley. He used Mercer tiles to decorate and ornament the housing. Your Arcadia book says he used it here, but then he didn't use it anymore. My theory would be he didn't want to show Arden as kind of a knockoff to Rose Valley. In other words, he wanted to preserve the concept of Rose Valley, the branding of what that housing looks like, and not just duplicate it someplace else. Could be wrong. The fact that there aren't many of these other houses tells me that. Friendly Gables, the first of the Fells houses, still has some of the original. Is that your house? Well, I met your husband, I think. Yes. You were kind enough to tell me a little history. Well, I met a lot of people, nosing around. I'm sorry, researching. Well, it's the spirit of this place that comes across. That's the point. Anyway, these 2 houses, you see how simple they are. They are cottage-like. They are they've all, I think, they have all been expanded. I don't know what has gone on with the infrastructure of the houses, but they just have a quality to, I'm not going to say charm. I don't like charm related to buildings, but they are charming. They are English. They are countryside, and they're exactly what they appear to be. And they go very well here. And I can't, what's happened to make things somewhat difficult is all the landscaping has grown up. I saw a picture in the book. That tree was not there. Maybe it was a sapling when it's in the book. This is the second homestead, obviously. But I mean, I would start to be nervous about that tree in the yard just because of its size and age. But you see, again, the characteristics here are very simple. Shed dormers, not an overabundance of any kind of lighting other than the windows. When you get close to some of these buildings, and I don't know if it really shows, you start to see the detail. Well, the motto board, for instance, I mean, they're visible here. There was something up in this eave that I think was removed. You can see it on this black and white photo. Those little elements of personality that are on these buildings were what the arts and crafts movement was all about. The lodge is, that was the last one, maybe not the last one done, but located on the sweep where it is, it's one of the more prominent buildings. I mean, it's on Harvey Road, basically, or not far. I mean, you get to see it quite easily. Oh, it's across the street from the craft shop. That's right. And then here's the Feld's house. Same thing, shed dormer, simple window treatments. All of the stone, I assume, is out of Naaman's Creek. Just because everything around here is that granite. And the function of the Fells houses was to use native materials. The other elements that I think are really telltale here are things like the theater, which, do I understand Will Price's Ashers
someone in the
are
background
there?
like moping on the couch.
Oh, Frank Stevens, I'm sorry. I got something wrong there. And, but all of the other elements here that are still, does that map show all of the connectors? There, I figured there'd be more, but anyway. Every time I was out, you'd see somebody on it with a dog, usually. I didn't see any bikes on these trails. Are bikes not allowed? Well, I didn't see any of those. Lots of dog walkers. And then the personal aspect of the craftsmanship, again, shows through with things like that. And this, one of my favorite things of all, is the Moonlight Theater, the idea of creating that kind of communal assembly area in such a natural way and use the natural landscape in which to do it. The Gild Hall, again, I don't, when I look at this, the base, the foundation of the Gild Hall, it almost looks like this is dry laid rock, a stone. I suspect there's mortar in there somewhere, but it's not visible. When you get up close here, you'll see it's been patched or repointed somehow in that area. But this whole presentation, I've never seen an event there. I'd like to, because I can imagine what it is. It's just a phenomenal expression of what Arden's all about. The craft shop, same thing with the stone. And I don't know that this has had too many varieties to it or additions. And again, it's very straightforward, very simple. I don't know what the original roof was or is now. I couldn't tell. I assume it was the same terracotta structure to begin with, and it might still be. One of the things I really like, I was thinking this was not original, and maybe it isn't, but it goes all the way through the parkland, the square, and it reminds me of something I learned in a college design we worked on once when we were trying to second guess where the sidewalks ought to go in a site plan, and the school people said, "Now leave the sidewalks out. 6 months in, we'll know where to put the sidewalks because that's where the kids will be." That's sure enough. And that's what this told me. I said, oh, look at that. Same thing is happening. There's a reason for this connection, and there's the evidence of it. Now, the red house, and this brings me, I'll show it to you here. I've seen the real red house in England. Wrong button. And there it is, 1859. This is William Morris's house. It's red brick. There is no color photograph of it, but it is the model, not the model of your red house, but the nature of, or the symbolism of the red house. Further looking at some of the timber, and this is all out of this book. I'm amazed it was still on my bookshelf, but it's a souvenir of London in 1967 when my wife and I were there. And I've seen buildings like this. I've seen buildings with thatched roof like this. So to get masonry on the roof is terrific. Here's another example, just moving forward in terms of dates. And these are all English country houses developing through the ages. And this is the arts and crafts house of this gentleman. These are all postcard renderings of all of those houses. Voicy was one of the master builders of the Garden City developments and the country houses of the day. This photograph of Price's office says a lot about his love of the arts and crafts aspect. The furniture, here are the pins again. This is all Mercer tile. Everything gets a decoration. I love this. I think that might be a chandelier, the antlers. But all of this is his professional office. Every little touch, every little, and all of these things are probably tile or wood. All of the wood is carved. And it says a lot about his style and his manner of living, I think. The wood mansion is something that was done. Here's the comparison again. Maybe this is where Price starts to get a little bit of the Furness influence. The house on the right is Furness, 1881. And you just can't calm that roof down. There's a projection everywhere trying to make the building move, which it does. I can't imagine how you ever draw the floor plan of that thing. He also did the Media Armory in 1908, in 1876, Furness did the head house of the First City Troop, which is shown here, so that they had a new armory for the not only the nation's centennial, but also their centennial anniversary. No, this is Price. I think he only did one. Furness did one. The hotels, this is the Traymore, Atlantic City. And Furness did one for the Pennsylvania Railroad, which is now the Baldwin School. This is in Bryn Mawr. This was originally the Pennsylvania Railroad Hotel. And here comes the Marlborough Blenheim, which was a project of Price for some 10 years between additions and modifications, and it kept growing, and he kept discovering new ways of using reinforced concrete. On the right-hand side is the now demolished B&O Pennsylvania Railroads, the B&O station in Philadelphia. That's what I was trying to say, on Broad Street. Everything in Furness's building is steel, and it's all exposed. Even the decoration. This is all a form of factory-made components. Price beat Furness when it comes to hotels. He did them in 7 or 8 states. He developed a market for it. And that's a lecture in itself, is to follow all of the hotel work that was done. And starting to wrap it up, Furness had done 125 different railroad stations. This is the Market Street Philadelphia station on the right. And I've shown one building, a modest one in Fort Wayne, Indiana, also for the Pennsylvania Western branch. And you just see, this is Price, Furness. Yes. Yes, thank you. And this is an interesting piece, because this is, on the left is Frank Furness in the 1800s doing the Clark House in Bryn Mawr. This is now on the corner entrance right across the street from the Baldwin School. It's the entrance to Bryn Mawr College. And this on the right is some 10 years later, Price did an addition, which is very visible to what Furness had done originally. This photograph is from the rear. This gable here is this one. You're looking at the side of the building here. There's the side of the building. This is the rear of the building. This is the front of the building. But you see the two side by side. And these are some details of the Furness development. Same thing, brackets, fish scale siding, dormers, projections, arched windows, stone patterns. Inside, this is all Price. It's all hand carved. And I'll just show you the close-up examples of what his kind of arts and crafts work did. Every one of these things is it's sort of priceless. It's just beautifully done, all hand carved. And that is the end of my particular story. I have no idea what time it is, but questions? And let me remind you also, please take one of these as you leave. And if we are at a conclusion at this point, I would like to make one other presentation. And I don't know who I should give this to, either the museum committee or Jen. I will be there. Jen, excuse me.